As was said on Sunday, perhaps you too experience now that everyone's story is our story. And not only that, that the characters and archetypes and symbols that are revealed in those stories are part of ourselves. But also that now, more and more, we experience that our sensory awareness, the sound of the birds, the rooster crowing, the wind, are not outside, not separate in any way. But there's a story that allows a question to be asked, remembering this. It's a story about a man called Mojud. Now Mojud was an ordinary man. He followed the faith of the day, but he wasn't particularly pious or religious. And he'd worked as a clerk in the office of weights and measures in a government institution for several decades. But one day when Mojud had come home from his workday and was kicking off his work shoes, preparing for the evening, Khidir, who is called the Green One, appeared to him. Now it's known by all that Khidir comes to mankind when they're at a point of transition, crisis, or ripeness, depending on which way we look at it. And Khadir said to Mojud, give up your work, give up all, give up your house, and meet me down by the river in 3 days. Now Mojud somehow did not question this. And so the very next day he went into the office and resigned from his position. He cleared his household affairs and went down by the river. And there, as was told to him, Khidir appeared to him and said, jump in the river. And so Mojud did. But of course in the meantime, before this, all his workmates and all thought that he'd gone completely mad. But they weren't too concerned because there were those who coveted his position. But Mojud could swim, so he didn't drown. But as he swam down the river in the current, he turned a bend and was moved towards a sandy area where there was a fisherman who hauled him out of the river and said, what are you doing in the river? And Mojud said, I just jumped. And the fisherman said, oh, you silly man, but pulled him out and dried him off and gave him dry clothes. But when the fisherman discovered that Mojud was literate, he could read and write, the fisherman said, well, you can stay with me, I'll teach you how to fish if you teach me how to read and write. And this is exactly what happened. So Mojud was there for some time and he learned the way of fishing, and he taught the fisherman how to read and write. But after some little while, Khidir appeared to him once again and said, leave this place now and go on the road. Something will happen. So, wearing his fisherman's gear, Mojud left and wandered down the road, somewhat aimlessly, but before too long there was a farmer coming the other way, and seeing this man looking somewhat bewildered and a little bit lost, he said to Mojud, you happen to be looking for a job, because I need someone to help me to go to market with the goods that I have. Mojud said, oh yes. So he went off with the farmer, and he helped him to set up his stall in the marketplace, and then he became an employee of the farmer, and he learned the ways of farming. But again, after some while, Khidir appeared to him once again and said, now go into the city and find a certain grocer and become his employee. So this is exactly what Mojud did. He went, and somehow he was guided to this trader, grocer, and he indeed was employed by him. And it was found that he was showing distinct signs of what we might call enlightenment, wisdom. And the people who came into the shop, they started to ask him advice and questions about life, and he would enlighten them. And then, after a while, Mojud had earned quite a bit of money for himself, being an employee, and he thought that he might buy himself a house and just settle down. But Khidir came along and said, no. So it seemed that Mojud was resting now in this place, just an ordinary grocer's assistant. But coming to him were those who were said to be quite advanced in the ways of this and that and the other, but drawn to Mojud to ask questions and receive wisdom and advice. And of course, as is the way with such people, wanted to know, how did you come to be so wise? How did you come to be so knowledgeable? What is your story? Mojud would say, well, I jumped in the river, and then I became a fisherman, and then I learned the ways of farming, and now here I am, serving you with your rice and flour and essentials. But of course, we know the way of such things. There were those who made embellished stories about what it was that Mojud's life had been to bring him to this place. But Mojud continues to do what is there to do as a simple grocer's assistant. So the question that arises out of this story is, what in us is Khidir? What is in us that speaks to us, not even with a voice of absolute authority, but we answer. We respond without question. If it said, go jump in the river, or pick up the phone and ring someone, we do it without question. Who is this Khidir? Knowing, as we do now and experience for ourselves, that nothing is outside. It's not the voice of our higher self coming from out there, just like the sound of the birds and the wind is no longer out there. But what is it? Who is this Khidir? What name will you call it? The green one. The Elijah, the prophet. What is it that now we don't question? We obey. And why? What is it? Khidir, the green one, the prophet Elijah, the higher self, the God self, the Guru. Mentor. No longer outside.